Welcome to Fear and Fiction, where the stories are strange and the fear is real. What's going on, Fear and Fiction family? We are back at it. I want to thank everyone for continuing to support the channel. Thank you for the likes, the shares, the comments. It means the world to me. Today, we're going to do some trap house horror stories. If you've never been to a trap house or seen a trap house, I'm sure you've heard of a trap house. Let's get into it. I want you to understand something before I tell you this story. The trap house on my block has been boarded up for 2 years. 3 months ago, a woman inside that boarded up house called me by a name nobody has used since high school. Nobody alive, that is. I live in Hayti, the old black neighborhood in Durham, North Carolina. If you know Hayti, you know our blocks. If you do not, just know that the house 2 doors down from mine was a known trap house for about 14 years. Different boys ran it. Same house. Green wood frame, white trim, a porch you could see from my front window. The police raided it in 2023. Boys got arrested. House got boarded up by the city. Padlock on the door, plywood over every window, tall grass. The kind of empty house you walk past and try not to look at. I have a Rottweiler named Junior. I walk him every night at 10:30, same route. Down my block, past the empty house, around the corner of Pettigrew Street, and back up. I have walked that route 500 times in the last 2 years. 3 months ago, on a Tuesday night, Junior stopped at the empty house. He sat down on the sidewalk in front of the porch and would not move. I pulled the leash. He would not budge. He has walked past that house 500 times. He has never once stopped. I knelt down next to him. I told him, "Baby, come on, let us go home." And a woman's voice from inside the boarded up front window said my high school nickname. Said it slow. Said it like she was tasting the word. "Bunny, I want you to understand. Nobody has called me Bunny in 20 years. My friends from high school called me Bunny because my last name is Bunting. We stopped using it after graduation. I have not heard that name out loud since 2004. And somebody in that boarded up house said it like she had said it 1,000 times. I dragged Junior home. I locked my front door behind me. I sat on my couch with my coat still on for 20 minutes before I could move. I told my husband. His name is Andre. We have been married 12 years. He is the most rational man I know. He told me I was tired. He told me I had been pulling long shifts at the hospital. He told me my brain had probably filled in a word from somewhere, and the wind on the boarded up porch had done the rest. I asked him how the wind says Bunny. He told me he loved me and I needed to sleep. The next night, 10:30, I made him walk Junior with me. Junior stopped at the same spot, sat down on the sidewalk, would not move. I looked at Andre. I told him, "Listen." We stood there for almost a minute. Andre started to say something. I think he was about to tell me I was being paranoid. And the woman in the window said it again, "Bunny." Andre heard it. I watched his face change. He picked Junior up under one arm. He grabbed my hand with the other. We did not run. We walked fast. He kept looking over his shoulder all the way home. We changed our walking route after that. Went the other direction around the block, did not pass the empty house, did not look at it, did not talk about it. It worked for about a week. Junior went back to normal. He pulled on the leash. He sniffed everything. He chased squirrels. He acted like a dog again. I started sleeping through the night. Andre and I joked about it a little, not laughing at it, just acknowledging it had happened. We told ourselves we had heard something and we had stopped going past the house, and that was the end of it. I should have known better. On the Sunday of that week, I drove past the empty house on my way to the grocery store, just to see. The plywood on the upstairs window was crooked. It had not been crooked before. I have walked past that house 500 times. The plywood was nailed flat, tight. The city work crew that boarded the house up did a thorough job. None of the plywood had ever moved. The upstairs window now had plywood pulled out at the bottom corner, like somebody had pried it loose from the inside. I sat in my car at the stop sign across the street and I looked at that window, long enough for somebody behind me to honk. I drove to the grocery store. I bought nothing. I came back home, and I went up to my attic. There's a box of my old high school stuff up there. I had not opened it in 15 years. I do not know why I went to it that night. I just did. I pulled out my senior yearbook from 2004. I sat on the attic floor, and I turned every page. On page 87, I found her, the girl who used to call me Bunny. She was in my homeroom freshman year. She was the one who started the nickname after she heard the teacher call my full name on the first day of school. She was loud. She was funny. She was the kind of girl who made up nicknames for everybody and made them stick. I had not thought about her in 20 years. I pulled out my phone right there on the attic floor. I looked her up. She went missing in 2007. 3 years after we graduated. She was 21 years old. Last seen on Pita Grew Street in Hayti, 2 blocks from where I live now. Her family believes she got caught up with the boys who were running the trap house at that time. The same house, 2 doors down from mine. The house that was active in 2007 and got raided 16 years later. Her body was never found. I sat on the attic floor for a long time holding that yearbook open to page 87. 3 nights later, I was washing dishes at my kitchen sink. My kitchen sink faces my backyard. The window was open in the summer, and a woman's voice in my backyard said it. Bunny, not from the empty house anymore, from my own backyard. I dropped a coffee mug in the sink. The mug shattered. I cut my hand on it. There's still a scar on my left palm from where I cut myself that night. I looked out the window. The motion light on the back porch was on. The yard was empty. But she said it again, closer, like she was on the back steps. She said, Bunny, baby. They never even looked for me. Andre wanted to move. I told him no. I cannot fully explain why. Some part of me knows that whoever she is not trying to hurt me. Some part of me knows that whatever happened to her in that boarded up house, she has been there since 2007 and the only thing she wants is somebody to know. But I do not look at the empty house anymore. I do not walk past it. I do not go in my backyard after dark. I do not stand at my kitchen sink with the window open. And every once in a while, late at night, in the kitchen or in the bathroom or just lying in bed, I hear a woman's voice say, Bunny. Sometimes it is sad, like she is calling me from far away. Sometimes it is closer, like she is in the next room. I do not answer. I do not know what would happen if I did. But I think about her family every day now, and I think the house remembers everybody who came through it. I was 19 years old the night I sat on the wrong porch in the east end of Richmond. I was dating a boy named Quincy. I had met him at school in North Carolina. He was from Richmond. We had been together about 6 months, and he was bringing me home to meet his family for the first time. We pulled up to his cousin's house on a Friday night around 9:30. His cousin lived in a brick 2-story off 21st Street, the kind of house that looked like every other house on the block. White curtains in the front window, a porch with a folding chair, plants and pots on the front steps. Quincy said his cousin was running late getting home from work, and we should just wait on the porch. I sat in the folding chair on the porch. Quincy told me he needed to run to the corner store for a Black and Mild, and he would be right back. I told him I would just wait. I had my phone. I had a bottle of water. The porch was nice. It was a warm night for April. I was good. I want to tell you what I did not know. I did not know what Quincy's cousin did for a living. I did not know what was in the basement of that house. I did not know that the folding chair I was sitting in had a particular meaning on that block. I did not know that the cousin had been beefing with some boys from the next block for almost 2 months. I did not know that the cousin had a girlfriend who looked enough like me from a distance that under street light, in a folding chair, on that porch, at 9:30 on a Friday night, you could not tell us apart. Quincy walked off down 21st Street toward the corner store. I was alone on the porch for maybe 4 minutes. A car came down the street slow. I noticed it because the engine was loud. Some kind of older sedan, black or dark blue, I could not tell. Tinted windows. The kind of car a boy puts a sound system in before he puts brakes on it. It rolled past the house. Then it stopped. Then it backed up. I had my phone in my lap. I was looking at Instagram. I did not look up at the car until I heard the window come down. The driver's side window was down. There was a young man in the driver's seat. He could not have been more than 16 years old. I remember thinking that very clearly. He was a baby. He had a fade. He had a black t-shirt on. His chain caught the streetlight when he leaned forward. He was holding a handgun. He had the gun pointed at me through the open window of the car. His arm was extended across the steering wheel. He was looking at me down the barrel. I did not move. I did not scream. I did not cry. I did not run. I sat in that folding chair with my phone in my lap, and I looked at the boy with the gun, and I did not move. He looked at me for what felt like a minute. It was probably 4 seconds. Then he lowered the gun. He said 2 words to me through the open window. He said, "Wrong porch." He rolled the window up. He drove away. Quincy came back from the corner store 6 minutes later. I was sitting on the porch with the same folding chair and the same phone and the same bottle of water. I did not say anything to him. I could not. I think I smiled at him because that is what I do when I'm scared. His cousin came home from work 20 minutes after that. We had dinner. I met his family. I sat at their table and I ate spaghetti, and I made small talk about my major. And his cousin asked me how I liked Richmond, and I told him it was nice. I did not tell anybody what happened. I drove back to school in North Carolina with Quincy that Sunday afternoon. I did not tell him until we were halfway through Virginia on Interstate 85. He pulled the car off at a rest stop. He cried. He told me his cousin had been running product out of the basement of that house for about a year. He told me his cousin had been beefing with some boys from the next block. He told me he had not told me because he had not thought it mattered. He had not thought I would be involved. He told me his cousin had a girlfriend who sat on that porch every Friday night around 9:30. His cousin's girlfriend was about my height, about my complexion, about my hair. I want you to understand, the boy in the car was not coming for me. He was coming for somebody who looked like me, who sat in that chair every Friday night. I went back to school. I broke up with Quincy 2 weeks later. I am not proud of that. He had not done anything wrong. I just could not look at him. His cousin got shot to death on that porch 6 nights after I sat in that chair. Same time of night, same car, same boy in the driver's seat. The girlfriend who looked like me was sitting next to him when it happened. She lived. He did not. I read the local paper online for weeks after. They did not put his name in. They did not name the block. They wrote 3 sentences about a shooting in the East End and the paper moved on. I am 27 now. I have not been back to Richmond. I do not sit on porches at night anywhere. I do not sit in folding chairs in any setting if I can help it. I want to tell you the part nobody knows. The part I have not told anybody since it happened. Last year I was visiting my mother in Atlanta. We were at a cookout at her best friend's house. The best friend has a daughter who is around my age. The daughter was telling a story about a house she lived next to in Richmond when she was younger. A house where a cousin of hers had been killed on the porch. I sat there at that cookout and I listened to her tell my story from the other side. She said the family had to board the house up after her cousin died. Nobody wanted to live in it. The estate sat for years. The city eventually took it for back taxes and condemned it. She said the boarded up house is still there, on 21st Street. Same brick 2-story, same porch. She said sometimes, when her aunt drives past it, she swears she sees her cousin sitting in the folding chair on the porch. Same folding chair, still there. 12 years later, on a porch nobody is supposed to be on. I have not been back to Richmond. I am not going back to Richmond. And every time I hear a car engine slow down outside my house, I freeze in place. I do not move until the engine speeds up again. I have not moved fast enough to get out of the way of a car in 8 years. I moved into a row house on the east side of Wilmington in the summer of 2022. My daughter had just started at the University of Delaware. I had been divorced about 3 years. I wanted to be closer to her. I bought a row house on French Street for $94,000, cash. The house next door to mine had been a trap house for about 15 years before it got shut down. The realtor told me. She did not have to. I would have figured it out on my own. The east side has changed over the last decade, but the people who grew up here know which houses were which. That row house on the right side of mine had been a trap for as long as anybody on the block could remember. It had been boarded up since 2013. The previous owner had passed, and the estate had never been settled. The house was in legal limbo, padlock on the door, plywood on the windows, 9 years of nothing. It did not bother me when I bought the place. An empty house next door sounded fine, better than a loud one. About 3 weeks after I moved in, the traffic started. I want to be specific about what I mean by traffic. I mean cars pulling up to the curb, doors slamming, footsteps on the porch next door, voices, the screen door on the empty house opening and closing, sometimes for hours, sometimes a quick exchange and a car driving off, always between midnight and 4 in the morning. I called the non-emergency line. Officers came out the first time. They checked the house. They told me the house was empty and locked from the outside. No signs of forced entry. They told me I was probably hearing the house 2 doors down, where they had had complaints before. I told them the noises were coming from the empty house on the right of my house, not the one 2 doors down. They wrote it down. They left. It happened again the next night, and the night after that. I started keeping a journal. I wrote down the times, the number of cars, the duration. After about 6 weeks of this, the pattern was clear. Cars rolled up every 15 to 20 minutes, stayed 2 to 5 minutes, drove off. From midnight to 4 a.m., every single night. I am not a stupid man. I know what that pattern is. I grew up in this neighborhood. I have heard that pattern my whole life. Somebody was running product out of that house, but the house was empty, boarded up, locked from the outside. I had checked it myself in the daytime. The padlock was the original city padlock from 2013. The plywood had not been moved. The grass in the front yard came up to my waist. On a Wednesday night in October, I decided I was going to confront whoever was using my next door neighbor's house as a trap. I waited until the next car pulled up. About 1:15 in the morning, I heard the door slam. I heard the footsteps on the porch. I heard voices. I walked out my front door in my house shoes and a hoodie. There was nobody on the porch next door. There was no car at the curb. The screen door of the empty house was swinging slightly, like somebody had just walked through it. But the wooden door behind it was still padlocked with the city padlock that had been on it for 9 years. I stood on the sidewalk in front of that house for about a minute, and then I heard a voice. It was coming from the porch. There was nobody on the porch, but the voice was clear. A man's voice. He said, "Take it around back." Another voice answered him. From the porch, closer to the door. Also a man, younger. He said, "I got you." I knew that second voice. I went to school with the man whose voice that was. We called him Pook. He was killed at a gas station on Lancaster Avenue in 2003. I was at his funeral. I helped his mother pick out flowers. I stood on that sidewalk and I listened to Pook tell somebody on an empty porch to take it around back. I went back inside my house. I locked my door. I sat on my couch. The traffic kept going next door until a little after 4 a.m. I have been hearing the voices on that porch every night for almost 3 years now. I have started to recognize more of them. There are at least 6 men I knew growing up whose voices I have heard on that porch. 4 of them are dead. 2 of them are in prison. I have stopped calling the police. I tried to do my own research after the first year. I went down to the Delaware Historical Society. I pulled records on the row house. I read every newspaper article I could find that mentioned the address. Between 1996 and 2011, 6 men were arrested on or near the front porch of that house for distribution. 3 of those men were later killed. 2 more died in prison. 1 is doing a life sentence in Sussex Correctional. 6 men, same porch, same 15-year stretch. I counted the voices I have heard. There are at least 6. I want you to think about that for a minute. I have stopped my journal. I do not write down the times anymore. I do not track the cars. I do not stand at my front window after midnight. But I want to tell you the last part. The part I have not told anybody. About 3 months ago, I was lying in bed with my window cracked. The traffic was going next door, and a new voice came up on the porch. A voice I had not heard yet. It was my voice. I sat up in bed. I listened. My voice on the porch said, "I told you not to bring that around here." Another voice answered, "I have not slept in my bedroom since that night. I sleep on the couch with the television on. I do not know what is happening in that house. I do not know if I am sick. I do not know if something is wrong with me. I do not know if I did something in my 20s I cannot remember. I never sold. I never ran. I never had any business with the boys on that block when I was young. I went to college. I worked at the bank. I did everything right, but I grew up 2 blocks from that house. I knew everybody whose voice is on that porch. And there is a stretch of months in 1998 that I cannot fully account for. I lost my best friend that year. I was drinking. I do not remember every night. I cannot tell you for sure that I was never on that porch. I just know that the man on that porch right now sounds exactly like me, and he sounds like he has been there a long time. I used to do cleanup work for abandoned properties around Atlanta. Most of the jobs were depressing more than scary. Burned houses, eviction units, old apartments full of mold, needles, broken furniture, and whatever people leave behind when life falls apart too fast. After a while, all those places start blending together. But there's one apartment in Bankhead I still think about constantly. This happened in 2018. A property management company hired me and another worker to clean out an abandoned unit in an old apartment complex off Donald Lee Hollowell Parkway. Everybody knew those apartments used to be rough. By the time we got there, half the buildings were already boarded up, broken stair rails, graffiti covering the walls, tall weeds pushing through cracked sidewalks. The apartment we were assigned was in the back building on the 3rd floor, corner unit overlooking the alley. You could still see black scorch marks around the front door where somebody had tried to burn the place years earlier. The property manager told us the woman who used to live there had died a long time ago, and nobody had touched the apartment since. At the time, that didn't sound unusual, but abandoned apartments in Atlanta usually don't stay untouched unless people around the neighborhood are avoiding them for a reason. Me and the other worker, a dude named Reggie, went upstairs around 8 that morning. The hallway already felt strange, too quiet. No pipes rattling, no birds outside, no movement anywhere in the building, just silence. We unlocked the apartment door and stepped inside. The whole place smelled old, not rotten, not dead, just stale, like cigarette smoke trapped inside wet carpet for 20 years. At first, the apartment looked normal for an abandoned trap house. Old couch against the wall, broken television, mattress on the floor with no sheets, needles still sitting in the bathroom sink. Then I looked up. There were children's shoes hanging from the ceiling, dozens of them, tiny sneakers, church shoes, little sandals, school shoes, all hanging upside down from fishing wire, slowly turning in the dark air. I remember standing there staring at them for a long time, because something about children's belongings in abandoned places feels deeply wrong, especially that many. Reggie looked up beside me and quietly said, "What the hell?" There had to be 40 pairs at least, and they all looked worn. Real shoes, used shoes, not decoration, like they belonged to actual kids. We called the property manager upstairs. The second she stepped into the apartment and looked at the ceiling, her face changed. She stood there frozen for a few seconds before quietly telling us not to touch anything. Then she walked back outside and made a phone call. That's when I started noticing the writing on the walls, names, written in black marker all over the apartment. Some had ages beside them, some had years. One wall said, Kiara, age 8. Another said, Marcus, summer 2009. Near the kitchen doorway there was one name circled over and over, Janelle. Underneath it somebody had written, still waiting. The apartment stopped feeling abandoned after that. It felt occupied, not physically, emotionally, like the place still belonged to somebody. The property manager eventually came back upstairs with an older maintenance supervisor. The older man stepped inside, looked at the ceiling once, then immediately stepped back out into the hallway. Then he asked us something strange. He said, "Did either of y'all hear kids talking in here?" We told him no, and I remember him looking relieved after we answered. That bothered me more than anything else. Eventually, he explained what people around the west side used to say about the apartment. Back in the late 90s, the woman living there let dealers run product out the unit. People also dropped children off with her sometimes, while they got high or disappeared for days at a time. Then over the course of one summer, several children from nearby neighborhoods went missing. Nobody was ever charged. No bodies were ever found. But rumors spread through the neighborhood that the woman kept souvenirs from the missing children: shoes, clothes, toys. The woman eventually overdosed in the apartment sometime around 2004. Police cleared the place afterward, and according to the maintenance supervisor, the ceiling had been empty when officers searched the apartment. No shoes, nothing hanging. I remember slowly looking back up after he said that, because those shoes were still gently turning above our heads, like air was moving around them, even though every window in the apartment was boarded shut. The cleanup got canceled immediately. The supervisor told everybody we were leaving. Honestly, I was ready to go. Me and Reggie grabbed our tools and headed toward the front door. That's when we heard a little girl laugh, somewhere deeper inside the apartment. Not loud, not aggressive, just quick, like somebody reacting to something funny in another room. Me and Reggie both stopped walking. The apartment went completely silent again after that. Neither one of us checked the back bedroom. We left, fast. About 2 weeks later, I was scrolling through Facebook and saw somebody posting old missing children flyers from Atlanta neighborhoods during the late 90s. And I recognized the names immediately: Kiara, Marcus, Janelle. Every name written inside that apartment matched one of those old flyers. Every single one. I never went back to that complex again. The city demolished it a few years later. But something happened 6 months ago that still bothers me. I was cleaning out another abandoned house on the west side. Completely different neighborhood, different property, nothing connected to Bankhead. I opened a hallway closet, and sitting on the shelf by itself was one tiny pink sneaker, old, dusty, child-sized, and written inside the shoe in black marker was the name Kiara. I inherited my uncle's shotgun house after he died in 2019. Small place in the 7th Ward of New Orleans. Purple paint peeling off the wood. Iron bars over the windows. A narrow porch facing the street. My Uncle Leon had lived there almost 30 years. And if we being honest, everybody in the family knew what that house used to be during the 90s. Drugs. Nothing flashy. Nothing movie-like. Just enough poison moving through that front door to slowly destroy people around it. My mother used to say, "Your uncle kept demons on that porch." Back then, I thought she meant addicts. Now, I'm not sure. I moved into the house after my divorce because I needed somewhere cheap to stay while I got my life back together. During the daytime, the neighborhood felt normal. Kids riding bikes, music drifting through open windows, old men sitting outside talking about football and politics. But New Orleans changes after midnight, especially old neighborhoods. The city starts sounding older somehow, like certain streets remember too much. The knocking started about 3 weeks after I moved in. Every night around 3:17 in the morning, somebody would knock on the front door, always the same time. At first I assumed it was somebody drunk or confused. The first few nights I'd get up irritated, walk to the front door and look through the peephole. Nobody there. The street would be empty. No footsteps walking away. No car pulling off. Nothing. After about a week, I stopped opening the door altogether. But whoever it was kept coming every single night. The strange part was how uncomfortable the neighbors became whenever I mentioned it. People would either change the subject or suddenly find a reason to end the conversation. Like everybody knew something they didn't want to explain out loud. Eventually, an older woman across the street told me the truth. Back in the 90s, people used to line up outside my uncle's house all night waiting to buy drugs. Sometimes crowds would stand out there until sunrise. She said addicts used to beg my uncle to open the door, and sometimes he wouldn't. Sometimes he'd leave people standing outside for hours. Then she told me something else. The night my uncle overdosed inside the house, neighbors heard knocking at the front door almost the entire night. But my uncle never answered. They found him dead in the kitchen the next morning. After hearing that story, the house started feeling different to me, heavier, like certain rooms were holding on to something. One night, after the knocking stopped, I heard a woman crying outside the front door, soft at first, then louder. She kept saying, "Please, Leon, please." I sat frozen in bed listening to her. Then from somewhere inside my house, my uncle answered her, calm as ever. "I told you I ain't serving tonight." I know my uncle's voice, deep, slow, scratchy from cigarettes, and it sounded close, like he was standing somewhere near the kitchen. The next morning I searched the entire house. Nobody there, doors locked, windows locked. But the kitchen smelled strongly like cigarette smoke. My uncle smoked Newports every day of his life. I don't smoke. The smell stayed in that kitchen for almost 3 days. After that night, the voices outside became more frequent. Different people, men, women, sometimes arguing quietly, sometimes pleading. Always after the knocking, and always around 3:17 in the morning. Then came the night that finally made me leave. I woke up because it sounded like multiple people were standing outside the house talking all at once. Not yelling, just low voices layered together, like people waiting in line somewhere. I checked my phone, 3:17 a.m. A few seconds later, somebody knocked at the front door again. Then the voices outside started pleading. "Please let me in." "Come on, Leon. I got money." I sat there sweating in bed, listening to them. Then I heard footsteps moving slowly through my hallway, not outside, inside the house, dragging footsteps, moving toward the front door. And then I heard my uncle speak again, closer this time, near my bedroom. "Y'all gotta leave now." The voices outside suddenly stopped. Everything went completely quiet after that. No footsteps, no talking, nothing. I stayed awake until sunrise. When I finally opened my bedroom door, the hallway was empty, but there were muddy footprints leading from the kitchen to the front door. Bare footprints, dozens of them, like a crowd of people had walked through the house during the night. I moved out 2 months later. I still own the property, but nobody stays there very long. Every tenant leaves within weeks. One family claims somebody knocked on the door every night around the same time. Another tenant said he kept hearing people talking quietly on the porch when nobody was outside. But the last tenant told me something I still think about all the time. He called me around 4 in the morning sounding terrified. He said the knocking started like usual. Then he heard the deadbolt unlock by itself, and the front door slowly opened. He said the porch was full of people standing shoulder to shoulder, quiet, waiting, like they had been there a very long time. And standing in the middle of them was my Uncle Leon, smiling, like he had finally decided to let them in.
Okay, you made it to the end. I want to thank you again for supporting the channel. Please like, share, and subscribe. Get in those comments and tell me which story was your favorite. If you have any story ideas, let me know. Have a good day.